Hey friends, today I have another talk with an extraordinary yoga teacher. It's Christina Chang, and she is, I think, originally from the UK. And as always, it takes about 3 minutes until she can join. I think she's already there. And I'm really looking forward to have a sweet chat with her and speak about the past 12 months. So for all of you who haven't watched the episode before, this is about me speaking with people around the world and chatting about the past 12 months, especially what happened during the coronavirus and how they dealt with life so far, and what yoga played, what kind of role yoga played in their life. And yes, so that's basically the idea. And today with Chrissie or Christina, and let's give her a minute more to join and hope that it will work. Yesterday I had my birthday, so I'm a bit tired. Honestly, I had such a wonderful day, but today my energy is a little bit low. It's one of those days I probably just should stay on the couch and read or do something, nothing basically. But anyway, Chrissie, I hope you got my invitation. If not, just give me a text or something. And I think Chrissie and me, we met in Bali last year, just before Corona hit, or around the same time. And she was teaching at this school, but probably I will ask her that and she can tell. So if you are watching this on demand, like recorded, then probably just skip to minute 3 or minute 4, because most of the time it takes 3 minutes to people to join. And Chrissie, if you can already hear me, maybe you write a text. Sometimes that helps, and I can like add you to the picture. And yeah, if it doesn't work, we try it. Yes, I had the same problem a few times, and we just need to wait probably. For me, the hardest time of an interview, to be alone. It's funny because here, yesterday, we have 3 languages, and that makes my mind completely confusing. So many people speak in Greek. I have a German friend and another German guy who lives here, and then I speak English with Athena, and some others are English and British, and all a mix up. But at the same time, it's very nice to be able to speak to everybody in one language, mostly English, which everybody understands. Yeah. Chrissie, it seems, it's already like 4 minutes my life, it seems that it's not really easily working. I don't know, I have invited you. But I don't know. I cannot add you to the stream. Wait, I can add you. Yes. That looks good. Oh, no answer from your video guest. Let's try again. Is adding. It says it's adding. Yes, yes, yes. Hey, we made it. Do you have sound?
I do. Can you hear me?
Ah, yes, I can hear you. Great.
I had to run inside. The laptop wasn't working, and then it literally, just as you were like, I don't think it's working, then it sent me the invite.
Isn't that so often in life? Like, okay, you like you surrender, and then suddenly it's working.
Yeah, totally.
Ah, nice to see you. Nice to see your face.
You too. How are you?
As I said, I'm a little bit tired and zoned out, but other than that, I'm really good. Yes, thanks. So today I will ask you a few questions, and feel free to ask me anything you want. But if you don't want to answer something, anything, you just say skip, please, or whatever. I don't take it personal, and we just continue to another topic or something.
I'm sure I'll be fine. I'm an open book.
Okay. So, where are you at the moment?
So I'm based in the UK. I was in Bali a while ago now, but it doesn't feel long ago because I got home in the middle of obviously the pandemic, but during a time where things were still open, and not long after we kind of went into tier systems and lockdowns, and so time has passed. It feels like a recent thing, but yeah, UK, and I'm kind of settled here for the foreseeable.
Okay, so you came from Bali to the UK, and before we maybe dive in too much, probably for those who don't know you, can you introduce yourself very quickly? Like, what are you doing in life in general? What does your normal life look like if there would be no pandemic, probably?
Okay, yeah. So my name is Chrissie, and I'm a yoga meditation teacher and mentor. And so prior to pandemic, the last 4 or 5 years has seen me kind of traveling in between UK. They're really just pit stops to see the family, and then being either in India or across in Bali. And so I was relocated in Bali, teaching at a yoga school there. And then, you know, what life is like, things shift, things change. We have a pandemic, and so back in the UK.
Okay. Was that actually the reason that you left Bali? Was it the pandemic?
Yes and no. I mean, no, it was just, you know, things happen and transition occurs, and you realize certain things don't feel in alignment anymore. And I suppose, you know, there were certain things happening there that were going into one direction, and I felt myself going in another direction. And so for me to feel an integrity in terms of what yoga means to me and what I wish to offer, it meant stepping away. But I feel like the pandemic and everything that's happening was probably one of the things that was the catalyst for that to go there.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So, okay, and did your life change completely through the pandemic, or was it a smooth transition into this? Everybody was a bit out of their mind. It's like nothing happened ever before in this circumstances, like in this big thing that happened.
I think for me it was it felt like a pretty slow process because I was in Bali, the lockdown was very different to what it sounded like back at home. And you know, as it happened, we still had the freedom to go out, to go for a walk. I mean, I think the most radical thing that was happening was, I mean, restaurants you could get takeaway from, and the beach you couldn't surf anymore, and that was like the biggest stress. And then it kind of roller coasted a bit more. Yoga schools closed, but we managed to shift things so that we were offering classes live online. And so that, yeah, there was definitely change, but I feel like nothing so drastic that I felt I had the ground ripped from beneath my feet that I may have done if I was at home living something that felt more like a routine. So it was much more gentle. I have to say, since being home, and having this tier system and more restriction in terms of even just the freedom of traveling somewhere to go for a hike, I really feel those who have been in for such a suspended and prolonged period of time, because you do feel this almost like a stuckness. It's like I'll get on with life as much as I can, but I'm also prevented from doing certain things. And so, and this toing and froing between lifting and more lockdown and lifting and more lockdown, it's really hard to get a sense of consistency, I suppose.
But if I read a little bit between your lines, you finding nice little things to do which you probably haven't done before, like making a hike just on your doorstep and not traveling to another country which is 10,000 miles away or something.
Totally.
Or did you do that?
No, absolutely. So, I mean, whilst I was still in Bali, what I found that the lockdown gave room for was actually just stopping. You know, there wasn't so much distraction around, and actually that was a relief. And I found that even more so since being home. You know, I've spent so much time away, and I was really ready to come back. And I feel like I'm seeing England through fresh eyes. And so even if I can't travel too far afield, it is allowing me to just embrace, you know, the nature that's around me, the smells that happen, the shifts in the seasons. This was my first winter back in 5 years, and so I really got to experience what that's like. You know, it got to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was already getting dark, and I felt it stop. And even that, just new insight into, you know, if you do have a regular 9 to 5, which I don't at the moment, not to that degree. I was like, how do people go through this? Because my body needed to stop. And so, yeah, it's been really interesting with the restriction and having to do far less. It's kind of opened my eyes to experience other things to a greater degree or more vividly.
Yeah, I agree. I felt the same.
Yeah.
Often. Yeah. And you were not alone in the lockdown, so you had your family around or close. You have your partner, I think, also quite close. So you're not completely secluded. Is that right?
No, definitely not. So since relocating back home, I'm living with my mum, and we have a wonderful relationship. So I don't have any. Yeah,
Okay.
totally. I've missed her so much, and so it's just been an absolute joy to be close to her again. And her partner lives here, and he has his kids around every so often, and I love all of them dearly. So it's just been really, really lovely. So I've been lucky in terms of I still have that sense of human interaction.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But, and the funny thing is, you know, this is the longest I've been home in an extended period of time, and in that, I've not been able to catch up with any friends.
Really?
It's just not happened.
Crazy.
Which is so funny because I'm so close and yet so far.
Yeah. And do you plan to leave the country as soon as it's possible, or as soon as Corona's a little bit more over? Or do you feel now it's a good time to settle a bit more and probably make a base where you are now?
Yeah, I don't have that longing or that urge to escape that I used to have, you know. I was ready to move and to be somewhere else. And I think just in terms of my evolution and what was going on in my life, I needed to be in those places. But the call to come home has been there for a while. And what's been lovely, I suppose, about the situation, granted that I'm very held in it, I've got no complaints, is that I've really been able to connect back to what home is for me. And
What
to
is
notice, what is it? It's so grounding. You know, because I recognize the things that I experienced as a child, but as a child, you're taking it in a different way. And so there's more salience now. You know, I went back to the Lake District when things were open, and I got to see views that I've seen before, but it was breathtaking. I suppose because, you know, as you get older, you have certain responsibilities and roles that you're living and breathing, and sometimes that can feel like weights that you carry, you know, other things that you have to show up for. Whereas a child, you're just, you know, you're held and safe, so you're taking it all in. So for me, this reconnecting to those parts that were just part of life when I was younger were actually reminders that there's so much available on my doorstep if I just take the time to see it. And also if I shift my perception. For so long, it was like, God, it rains so much here. It's always grey here. The weather, I want the sunshine, I want the beaches. And now, you know, it rains and it's like, well, this is an opportunity for me to turn in and be cozy. It's also what makes the land so green, so that when I get outside and my breath is taken away, I know the rain had a part to play in that. And so it's been, yeah, it's just lovely.
Yeah, it seems like you're really living everything just more conscious and observing it and taking it in and yeah, living it in a different, from a different perspective. Maybe you grew older, or like I don't know how to say it.
No, you're spot on. And I've been, actually, it's one of the things I've said. It's like, it's so funny. It's seeing the same thing through a different lens. And, you know, my
Yeah.
time away and my study and my practices and the people that I got to meet and the connections that I made, all of that has played a part into me being able to come back with a greater appreciation for that which I resisted before.
Yeah.
And it's been such a wonderful, it's a blessing, because I do feel held in here and nothing's changed. You know, the same things that perhaps stressed me before are still there. They still exist in the same way. It's just my resistance to them has gone.
So, and how did you do that? Like, what did you went through to learn to not being triggered, or maybe even to being triggered, but to not react the same way as you did before? So, what was the transition you made?
Mm. I love what you said there. There's actually a teacher, there's a Vedic teacher called Tom Knowles, and he's like, there's no such thing as a stressful situation, just a stressful response to it. And I really like that. And it's the same thing. It's like, you know, it's not that the triggers disappear. I'm definitely
No.
still triggered, but the space between me and my reaction is greater. And so rather than becoming the reaction, I can see that it wants to rise, and I can think about what does it bring up within me? Why is it there? What is it trying to tell me? All gifts, really. The trigger's not something to deny. It's the body guiding you. It's a message about how you feel about a situation. And I, you know, in my experience, it's my practice, my journey through yoga, and its ever evolving movement and shifting patterns is what has helped me to get there. And, you know, just there's no one practice. That's what I love about it so much. And there's no one size fits all. You know, more and more, especially this last week, it's something that keeps coming up for me, is this realization that there are so many paths and they all lead to the same realization. And so for me, it's been yoga and meditation and, you know, really focusing on breath and studying the mind that has allowed me to step back towards that sense of wholeness, you know, that sense of I'm okay, everything's okay. And the more I can move from that space, the less I get wrapped up in a reaction, the more I can listen, you know, and be guided from that.
Yeah. But does it happen that you have a reaction sometimes?
Of course.
So, and let me follow to this, of course. Do you also perceive them or experience them differently, or like, yeah, differently? Let's say not differently, but if you like, let's say you are angry or you feel offended or something, and it's like you realize the space in between, you had the time to see, okay, now the reaction is coming, or now it's there, but do you have a different approach of the experience itself?
Absolutely. And it's not to say, like, yes, sometimes, other times I just become the reaction, you know, we're human. And it really depends what the trigger speaks to and what it's bringing up in you. Because often, you know, our reaction is a form of defense. It's because we feel vulnerable somewhere. And then there are many different ways like to react. Sometimes it's a big reaction, and other times it's a closing off and a contraction. And depending on the emotion, like for me, I actually am someone who holds on to anger. You know, I almost feel like I'm not supposed to express it, and that's just as bad as over expressing it. And so we have to find a healthy way to feel the feels. What I have noticed is I'm giving more space to recognize, let's say anger, because that's something I deny. I'm giving more space to recognize it in myself, even as like, you know, a somatic experience. I feel hot when I get angry. I can feel my blood pump. I can almost even hear my heartbeat in my ears. And I've never tuned into that before. It has been so interesting. But what it also allows me to do is, because I feel the physical sensation, I can also then be like, what are the thoughts that are running through my mind? And at least in my experience, what it has brought up for me is the capacity to laugh at myself a little bit more.
Nice. Even
And
if
that
you
just
like,
it.
if you're
Yeah,
angry or something.
I'm angry, even when
Yeah.
I'm angry, because we get angry about anything, you know.
Yeah, it's so
Fascinating.
silly sometimes, I know.
And sometimes it's just a thought. You know, it's
Yeah,
actually the
yeah,
situation itself isn't what makes you angry. It's a thought that then comes from that fuels the anger, and then another thought and another thought, and it
yeah, yeah.
tracks.
It's like building up each other. Like, yeah,
And we think ourselves into the emotion.
yeah.
So if we can catch that, and that's that's what these practices that I've been exploring have enabled me, then
Hmm.
we can laugh at ourselves. And I think that's a key piece to living more
It
joyfully, for sure.
is. It is absolutely. And I'm now curious if we connect that, what you just explained, to the coronavirus and the pandemic. What were your triggers of the virus, or let's say of the whole thing that happened through media and the world? Did corona or the thing triggered something in you? Was there triggered some fears? Was there triggered some, like, I don't know. Did
I never felt fear as such, and I'm not entirely sure why. The thing that first was brought up whilst I was in Bali was this need to be closer to my family.
Yeah.
Because we do catastrophize. I was like, what if things close and I can never get back to them? I need to be
Yeah.
close to them. So that was a thing that came up as really important to me.
Yeah.
And then it was just about approaching. But I know in terms of like, contrast and the experiences I was working through were, given that I don't deal well with anger, there are lots of occasions where people want to speak out, and that's perfect. I think the thing that I really had to deal with was my sense of judgment,
Of other
um,
people, or
of other people. And like, because like judgment comes up, we can be self-righteous even in the most perfect of situations. If we feel like someone is doing something wrong, that doesn't stop the fact that we're being judgmental. And so I definitely came into experiences where, I felt triggered by someone's actions, with how they
behavior.
were responding to the situation. Yeah.
Yes.
And
What was that?
what
Sorry, what was that concrete? Like, can you tell a concrete action that triggered you?
I didn't like the way, okay, I'll relate it in, I don't like double standards. Not that I don't do that. Sure, I do it sometimes, because also the thing that triggers me is a mirror. And so it's probably reflecting the moments where I've done that and I feel ashamed of that. Or, I feel like integrity is such an important quality to me. Like if we speak something, or if we're sharing something, we should live it and breathe it too. Don't just talk the talk, walk the walk. And it was just situations where it wasn't in alignment with who I wanted to be in a situation. But what I had to do was, rather than point the finger and be like, you're wrong, this is wrong, I had to see what it was a mirror. And so I was like, okay, it's telling me what's important in my life. How am I going to adjust so that I live in integrity to that importance? And how can I also just feel complete compassion for everyone's differences? So I think in my experience of the corona, because of the opportunities and the gifts that life presented, sweet or bitter, those were the biggest things I had to work with. How can I still show compassion in the places where I feel contrast? And how can I not become judgmental? Because regardless of what it's a judgment of, self-righteousness it actually just closes us off to the situation.
Okay.
How can I see the inherent goodness in even the most painful places?
Yeah. And regarding judgment, can you avoid to have the judgment, or is it just that you to deal differently when it arises as a thought or as a maybe even feeling?
Yeah, I mean, so I worked with a meditation from Rod Stryker that was literally for judgment, and it was so beautiful. Because again, it's one of those things where we can have a thought about a thing, and then another thought, and then we start to create this own internal story about this person that we have no idea what's going on inside their world. or why a certain reaction might be happening. And this meditation was so sweet because it was just stripping everything back, and it made you look at the person and be like, what have they been through in their life? What pain have they maybe
A
felt?
change of perspective, like 180 degrees.
You completely soften. I think Brené Brown has this wonderful quote, and she says, people are hard to hate up close. And it's so true, because, you know, despite what might be happening, whatever that person is doing, they're still doing their best. I really can't believe that someone, I mean, maybe somewhere, but I find it so hard to believe that the majority of people will intentionally be trying to make life difficult for someone.
Yeah, no, I don't think that too. But let's follow to the people who might do that. Do you think there are people who intentionally do that and maybe having a big power at the moment, using their power to sell vaccines or whatever? I don't know. Do you think that's there? Is there bad, evil in the world? Or is it just everybody's trying to do something good, but it's just really failing?
It's such a touchy subject, because the truth is there's suffering in the world. There's some really ugly stuff that we have to look at, and it's dark, and that's, you know, we can't deny that. But there's been, again, I'm gonna Tom Knowles is such a wonderful teacher to lean into, because it's this idea that regardless of how ugly the thing is, that person is doing the best they can with the awareness that's available to them. And so it invites, again, a different perspective. Like, how can I still, it doesn't mean I have to accept what that person is doing, but how can I see where it might come from? You know, even, again, things where you couldn't even imagine doing that thing yourself. You know, you're like, I couldn't bear to be the person doing that. But, you know, what have they been through that enables them to feel that that's okay? You know, what are they carrying? And you know, if we think about reaction, our reaction comes from defense and vulnerability and pain. And so the depth of me feels like it has to come from there too. From those tougher emotions that make us want to push back or close off. You know?
I know a nice technique which is used in radical honesty, and you if you have a dream, you can work with a dream, and often in dreams you experience a difficult situation, but you are the dreamer, you create a whole dream. So every part of the difficult situation, maybe you getting killed or whatever, is a part of you that someone kills you in a dream, but the one that kills you is created by you as well. So this technique is about like you going into the perspective of yourself being killed, but then you change the perspective to the person who kills you, and suddenly it changes completely, and you understand the reason why is this person there that kills you. Like, it's a part of you, and I think that's very similar how you explained it.
That's so powerful. I really love
very
that.
Nice.
Yeah, really. I mean, it's what a.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, what a really felt way to do that. Put yourself in someone's shoes.
Yes. It's very powerful. And it's a nice tool to understand your dreams, because different parts of you want to tell you something often.
Yeah, so cool. I'm gonna try that.
So how is those last days, like last couple of days, weeks, how's your emotional mood at the moment?
Ooh. I'm feeling pretty good. You know, here in the UK, we've got this kind of everything slowly lifting, which I'm quite grateful for, because the idea of everything just opening suddenly felt slightly overwhelming. There's a part of me that feels like I've forgotten how to do that life. There's also a part of me that realizes it's going to be different. So yeah, it's kind of cool. You know, we've got spring. Spring always makes me feel really wonderful. And again, it's my first in 4 or 5 years. And yeah, I just felt a really big sense of momentum this last week.
Of what? Sorry?
Momentum. Like, the driving force, and lots of creativity. So I'm in a good spot.
And if you think back, like 1 year past, how was it back then? And did you had transitions, curves, waves, up and downs? And do you want to share a little bit like your path?
For sure. What are we in? We're in April. So I would have been in Bali a year ago. I think I was literally on the periphery of handing my notice in. So it was quite rocky. I was in a lot of contemplation. So again, I was contemplating that, how do I feel? What is this reaction happening in me? Why is it happening?
Yeah.
Because that's key, you know, to explore the feeling rather than to act on it immediately.
Yeah. Can I ask you something in between? Which tools do you, or on what level do you work? Do you work on a mental level? Do you think things through, or do you work with your body, or is it a meditation you do, or is it all together? How do you do that? I'm curious.
All of it.
All of it.
Because if you think about yoga practice, like it is the experience to become quiet by first bringing the senses alive. You know, we use the body to feel, we breathe, we touch, we hear, and all of that is one way of first quietening the physical senses, so that then the mind is quiet. And so it's a journey through all the layers.
And you living that journey. It's not just when you teach, it's like you try to embody that in your life.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the whole, it's the beauty of practice. The practice is this container that can be your mirror so that you get to do life better. It's like, deal with the mess there, see where you're at, notice where you're holding, notice where you're reacting, and be totally compassionate to that. Like there's nothing wrong with it. It's like this space to really hold yourself in pure honesty, so that you have a clear feedback about how you're feeling and what you need to do to fine tune so that life can be more nourishing for you. So yeah, and you know, there's different practices. Maybe you move the body, maybe you just sit and meditate, maybe you breathe. Perhaps
What's
you
your
go
favorite?
Again, all of them.
Okay, I see.
Depends how I'm feeling, you know, and I think that's an important thing too. Like we can't be rigid with our practices. We have to tune in to how we feel. Some days for me, it's like, I don't want big movement. I'm just going to go and walk in silence in nature and let nature teach me. Other days, it's spending a day in the kitchen and cooking with ingredients because it's tactile and it requires presence. So I think anything that allows you to become more present in the moment, quietly having a cup of tea, there's sensory stimulation in that. It will bring the mind into the moment, as long as you're not multitasking. Anything like that it will be like the soothing balm to the world.
Do you also have days, or did you have a period where you said like, this whole always being mindful thing, it's too much, like fuck off? And I go and watch a movie with the crisps and whatever, something like really unmindful.
We have to, like, and also we can still do it. We can do those things mindfully, and we cannot. Sometimes we need to check out. You know, that's fine. I have a Netflix binge every now and again, and then I feel so drained from it that I stop for a while. But yeah, you know, like,
I know what you mean.
Yeah, we're not here to be perfect. You know, I think sometimes this idea of like the good yogi, the bad yogi, like practice is there to help you.
What was the most non-yogi thing you did in the past year?
In the past year, it really depends on what someone believes as non-yogi, right?
For you.
I feel like all of life is yoga, so it's fine. But I think do you know what I mean? I'm like super forgiving. I'm like, just be human. There's a really lovely Ramdas teaching that's like, you know, he was so concerned about getting free or becoming nobody, and someone was like, yeah, but you're in a human body, so you're supposed to be here first. And so I don't think it's about completely turning away from those pleasures.
I take that as an answer if you want.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to think, like, you know, probably ate too much. Eating's a thing for me. Like, I really indulge in some food. But I also do it when I'm feeling stressed. And I will just like, I'll stress eat. So maybe that. I've had many Netflix binges where I just get into a series and I get completely lost in that world.
Like until late night watching. Just one more.
Yeah, totally. although what I have found is the more you practice, the more you become sensitive to what you're feeding the senses.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
I can't watch something too late. And also if it's stressful. So I've just gotten to a series called Line of Duty, which is kind of based on cops or dirty cop, well, cops, police. It's the UK kind of London Met. And it's so intertwined and it's so on edge that if I watch two, I have to like go for a walk. It's just like I can feel it in my system.
Yeah, I know what you mean. You're creating the sensitivity, and then it's just Athena. That was like amazing not amazing. It was like I have no word for it. In the beginning, we watched a series which is called House of Money. No, what is it called? Whatever. It's a bit kind of action also included, and she was shaking. She's just not used to action, whatever, in TV, and she was shaking, and her whole body. And I was like, "What's up? What's happening?" And she, I don't know. And then we figured out it was the series. So she's just not used to watching series, and her whole body took it in and like worked with it and tried to get rid of the stress. It was pure stress for her.
That's so incredible because that's what animals do, right? When they're stressed, they shake.
Yes.
So it's amazing that she's actually so
trauma
like her body's
release.
still in that space that it will do it automatically for her.
Yeah, true.
I love that.
Okay, so tell me a highlight and maybe a low light of your past 12 months. Personal highlight, a situation. Maybe you can pinpoint a specific situation.
Okay. Oh my God, so I feel like there's so many highlights. I love life.
That's good. You can pick two.
I think my biggest highlight is being surprised by how much I love being home. Like it really blew me. I knew I wanted to come home, but it blew me away. Like I'm so ready to be here, and I'm really excited to when things open in a way like really connect with community again.
Do you have a memory, a specific memory where you say like, that was a situation I felt home, I felt like warm?
Yeah, I'll give like sprinklings of because there's not, again, it's just life. But during winter, so experiencing the seasons for me was really powerful. So during winter, I'd go for evening walks by myself, super wrapped up, colder than I've been in God knows how long. Like I feel like I spent months feeling cold. I couldn't get warm. But walking, it was, the Christmas lights were up and there was something that felt so collective about it. Like people were still applying effort to kind of live life in all of this restriction. I would smell fires. People would have their wood fires on, and there was just something so delicious about it. And I've watched that transition. So it's less often that I'm smelling a fire now when I go for a walk, but I'm hearing the birds like all day. Like it gets lighter in the morning, which is lovely, and the birds wake up with the sun, and I feel more awake, and you're just constantly reminded of that connection to something outside. And like the birds, they sound like England. Like I know when I go to India, there's a different sound, and so it's noticing things like that, like hearing the sounds that bring up childhood, or there's a feeling in my body of remembrance has been really powerful. And even smelling the air, like spring smells sweet. There's something about the way that the sun hits the grass and the earth that creates a smell that you recognize the shift in the season, and your body follows it too. And so that's been my highlight.
Thank you for sharing.
Pleasure. What's been your highlight?
No one has asked me that. Of the past 12 months, I mean, yesterday was such a nice day. From the first moment I opened my eyes until my last memory of falling asleep.
It's your birthday, right?
Yeah, it was my birthday, and I've never been a big birthday celebration type. But yesterday was just people came, and I hadn't organized anything, and it just happened. And I think because life was in a flow, and I was struggling the last year with having no flow, it was just all compressed into one day, which is just flew, and it's just flowing perfectly. I don't know. Yeah, I would say yesterday.
It's funny you say that because I felt the same. I was like, I'm not really a birthday person. They come and they go, and often I forget. But this
Yeah.
year, I had the same experience. It was such a beautiful day, and not much of anything really happened, but there was the people that were involved or the people who reached out that I got connected to. It felt really special.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And what I realize even more time by time is that I love the present moment. And if I can be in my body and feel it, and it's just so full, and it's like you saying loving life, I think that's it. And if you're fully there, it's just the present moment.
Yes, you're speaking to my soul. It's so true, right? Because that's why I love the start of a practice, a yoga practice.
Yeah.
Like just
Yeah.
initial stopping and feeling the physical body, noticing the sensations, and like just because you stopped and pay more attention, it's like the moment becomes more alive, and then more of it's available to you. And then, like you said, you start to find the magic in the mundane. The things that you would usually just let you pass suddenly seem, it's like childlike wonder again.
Yeah. And that's also like if I get into a mood, whatever that is, there are some emotions which are excluded now, but most of the emotions I can live fully, even if it's sadness or something. I enjoy feeling them. Some of them I have my difficulty still with, like anger is not so easy. But yeah, okay. Let's talk a little bit about your idea or your experience. If you go through a personal transition, not transition, transformation, as well as, or in a similar pace as the world is going through a transition. So for me, for example, Corona is a big transition which is happening on the world. Wherever that leads to, I don't know, but I feel I am kind of a fragment that goes through a transformation too. Did you felt that too? You're going through parallel to the Corona thing to a personal transformation.
Absolutely. And I think
what was that?
well, I think there's always this opportunity for evolution in terms of what life is presenting you. There's this wonderful teaching in yoga that each person has 3 major life lessons to learn, and you will always be presented opportunities in order to learn that thing and come to the realization of it. The faster you learn it, the less life's going to keep knocking on your door. And so these moments of contrast or, stickiness, feathers ruffled, they're actually something really important. It's a part of ourselves that wants to be seen so we can let go of our holding. And then I suspect when something as big as Corona and like the entire world being affected, it just means that transition or the expansion you're constantly kind of moving through is heightened. And so, yeah, for me, I think the biggest thing that I had to learn was being happy to stand in my truth. Like sometimes saying yes to yourself means saying no to others. And I'm a big people pleaser. And so I had to really get on board with that. But also, how can I express myself, even if there's disagreement or trigger, with compassion at the root of it? Like, how can I express myself with words that are kind and not blaming and not pointing? And those were my biggest evolutions. Seeing that, like understanding that it's okay to want the best for myself, and that we all have our own individual journey, and what's important to me is very worth seeing, and that will be different for someone else, and it's very worth them looking at what theirs is and being true to that too.
Yeah. And switching the perspective to a more global perspective, do you think do we as humanity have something to learn? Is Corona pointing to something like this is the opportunity, get it?
Having seen how much has come to the surface, I feel like we've got so much to learn. There's a lovely teacher I follow called Tracy Stanley. She's amazing. I recommend listening to her always. And I'm totally paraphrasing because I can't remember it, but she spoke about there's 3 pandemics we're actually facing. The first one is like the world. and what global warming and everything, like what's happening to nature. That's the first and primary one, even though it's not our most important. The second is like racism and racial equality that's come up again. And then the third one was COVID, she said. And somehow we've got it the other way around. We've placed all the importance on COVID when actually there's all this, everything else that's kind of like shaking and bringing it all up to the surface. So I think there's so much for us to learn. And the first place is coming back to yourself. It's seeing your own triggers, your own stories, because that we're not capable of taking in the rest of it if we don't open to our own stuff first.
I think that's very important.
Yeah, and so like, and to some degrees, this absolute stop on everything and restricting people in terms of what they can do has forced us to look at our stuff. And if we haven't ever done that before, like that's a lot. It brings up anxiety, frustration.
And at the place where you are, where you're more conscious about those things, do you feel you have a responsibility to go further and reach outside of you, like helping people to change or helping the world to change? Do you feel a responsibility? Do you think we as yogis have a bigger responsibility than a normal person who's just overwhelmed of themselves?
I think everyone has the responsibility. You know, and yoga or non-yoga, there can be people who've never practiced yoga before who'll be more mindful than someone who's been practicing yoga for several years. And so I think it's everyone's responsibility to wish the best for themselves, to take care of themselves first, because when you do that, you have more of you to offer to the world. You have more compassion, patience, more kindness. And if all of us could get on board to look after ourselves and nourish ourselves, then the way we'd all show up, like the world would look far greater.
Is that then collective healing? If everybody just cares for themselves? Yeah.
Like turn in first, know that that's okay, because what it will do is mean that you've got more to give.
Yeah.
Like you need to give that space for it.
Sounds so simple.
It's not. It's really uncomfortable, and that's probably why we don't do it. Like it's not. I think sometimes it, like, you know, yoga and the practices are just portrayed as finding peace, which I mean, ultimately you do, but it's not pretty. It's not a pretty process all the time. Like there's some stuff you dig up.
Absolutely. Is it ever ending? Do we have the chance to go through the process and then being perfect? Is it ending, or are we always in process?
No, we're always in process, in my mind. And it would be, I think it would be such a shame if we just arrived to perfection.
Would it be boring?
Yeah, you know, the whole reason we can experience joy is because we understand sorrow. So like you said earlier, like I can sit and now feel my sadness, which is something I've also been working with, because usually I will feel it as a physical sensation and I will run to try and distract myself. But actually, you know, the more we can turn towards our sorrow, the more we can turn towards our joy. And if we even think about the breath, there's an expansion and a contraction. And so everything is constantly moving and evolving. And I think that's, for me, that's more inspiring to know that it's never going to end. There's always more to learn and discover and unfold. You know, it might start to feel easier over time as we use the practices to understand how to take in life, but I think there's constant growth.
I think it's one of the very fundamentals of human being to have the striving for evolving yourself and expressing, and it's really at the bottom of us. If we stop, there's no life happening somehow.
Yeah, and I think you point to something really, I don't know, this is what came to me anyway when you were saying it. We are striving to evolve, but often we place our attention outside of ourselves. And so what we're trying to evolve is our external world, of which is constantly changing and transitioning and that we have no control over. When actually the thing that we're really seeking to do is evolve our internal world. Like, what are the stories that don't serve me? What are the limitations that are holding me back from expressing the part of me that wishes to come forwards? And so that it'd be super cool if we could really understand that that desire or that drive isn't to obtain more outside of ourselves, but to come back to something deeper inside.
Yeah. Chrissie, would you tell me a little bit about your practice? Just do you do daily practice? What kind of practice? Do you have a routine? Can you just share a little bit so we know what you have done to go through this past 12 months?
Yeah, I practice every day. The practice might look different depending on how I'm feeling. It used to be much more rigid. You know, I approached it with rigidity and discipline. But again, a teacher I'm following is kind of inviting devotion over discipline. And I thought that was such a relief, because you know, householders, we're living in the world. Sometimes you don't find the capacity for a 90-minute practice. It doesn't have to be that full. Really, it's this recognition of how can I touch in on that space that reminds me that I'm whole, that I'm okay, that there's trust, that I don't need to control or have all the answers. And whatever I can do to touch in on there, however brief, however long, is perfect. For me, you know, I practice a form of Tantric Hatha yoga. Sometimes I practice yin. I love traditional Chinese medicine. Other days, it's just simply meditation. Meditation every day, every single day.
How does meditation look like? Do you do a silent meditation, a specific style, gratitude, or is it what comes?
So I just completed a 9-month training with one of my favorite humans ever.
Oh, I'm so curious because I want to do a meditation training too. Please share.
I could not recommend a thing more. I signed up because I love him, and I just wanted to work alongside him again. I was like, I need to get more of that teaching and wisdom in my life. And so the meditation was secondary. I was just like, always useful. But oh my goodness, it's beautiful. You know, my first dip into meditation was a lot of Tantric Kriya meditation. And there's a lot going on. There's a lot of visualization, feel this, feel that. And for a mind that's busy, or for a mind that's a perfectionist, you can overdo it. I was like trying so hard.
It's nice insight.
And it took me time. Yeah, it took me time to get there. This is a combination of Vedic practice and also some Buddhist practices. And it's so beautiful. It's called Fire and Water. Yeah, and so it's basically, in a nutshell, learning the art of first, like, passive observation, spacious awareness, so that you can take the clarity of it into the depths of the mind and start to inquire. And so there's in kind of like brain science terms, it's finding balance first, and then there's deconstruction, so removing the old patterns, and then reconstruction. What do I want to invite more of in my life?
Nice.
It's so cool. There were so many practices within it, and then at the end you get this kind of, we'll call it the basmati rice practice, like your everyday. You can combine all of it together in a 20-minute practice. Yeah.
Do you also feel sometimes to not meditate? Do you have a bad consciousness then, or do you meditate every day?
I meditate every day at the moment just because I want to, not because I have to. And I think that's a key piece, you know.
I think so.
Yeah, like we mustn't punish ourselves. And it's not doing it, because what we do then is, oh, I haven't done it, I'm supposed to do it. We lose the reverence. Then we lose the devotion. We're not showing up, remembering what practice actually brings us. We're doing it to tick a box. And that just removes all of the magic. Do it because it's beautiful. Do it because of where it takes you. And then the days that you really don't feel like doing it, you probably should, because it will make you feel great, but just don't. And that's okay too.
I want to speak with you about one more topic, which is the death. And COVID is actually, through media, is making everybody aware of dead people. How many people dying every day? You hear it in every news channel, and it's dying is forbidden almost. If you die you haven't succeeded. Do we have a wrong interpretation of death in this Corona universe?
I just think it's perhaps something that's not explored so much, you know, aside from going down some spiritual paths, which are quite happy to delve into the topic. It feels pretty taboo, perhaps, in kind of normal everyday life. It almost feels morbid, even. But, you know, again, it's shifting our perspective because we've come to believe that this is our life and this is who I am and this is my body and there's nothing else. Then, of course, we're going to fear death. You know, I even remember as a child asking questions.
Yeah.
I was so baffled. I was like, but what happens when my body goes? And I couldn't believe, because I was feeling my soul. I was like, there's this part, there's an awareness, and like I'm having a conversation, like there's a part of me that can't go, like the body goes, but what's this? There's an internal kind of vast space that must continue. And it couldn't be explained. But it's funny because I think about that time now, and I was already intrigued or touching on something, who knows what. But yeah, like I feel like we just need to shift our perception towards it. You know, life is a celebration and death is just the next part of that. And imagine if life is just the initiation, like this is just the beginning to something even greater. And you know, we never know. And so why not lean into possibility and hope? And rather than fixating on when you might die, live fully. You know, that it's a miracle that you're actually here.
And does it go together, living fully and having lockdowns and restrictions and not seeing people and covering yourself?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. Like we make do with what we've got, right? Like just because there's, you know, in the face of adversity, you can either shut down and completely close off, or you can still find the magic in what's available. And so, you know, do I like wearing a mask all the time? No. Do I miss touching and hugging people? Yes. But what have I got available to me now that I can make the most of, that I will continue to celebrate and find appreciation in the little moments that are available to me? Because otherwise you're just, you know, it's just turning away from life.
It's already an hour, and I have one more last question. Sickness. In my experience, sickness is teaching us always something, and I think. Did you got corona, by the way? Okay. I think that corona is there to teach us also something, and yeah, how should I phrase it? Do you have a feeling or do you have an intuition about what is the right step to do to face it in future now? What would you say, like, how should we proceed to make the best out of it?
Again, this might differ for everyone, but for me personally, like looking at the pandemic, looking at the way that we live, I think if there's one thing that we can take away from this is shifting our priority, to let go of this idea that being busy is winning, and to understand rest is necessary. Like we can't make clear and conscious decisions if we haven't rested enough for the mind to feel safe. You know, even beyond spiritual aspect, just looking on a science level, sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system, if we're not switching between the two, which a child can do like that, you know, they have a tantrum and the next minute they're sleeping. We can't. As we get older, we go from that, we're doing is chuntering in the mind, that the stories like carries on. We keep living the thing that we can't switch over. And so we absolutely have to train ourselves. We have to flex that muscle almost of going from fight or flight and needing to take action, because we need that aspect of ourselves, but also finding deep rest, actually letting go, actually switching off the mind, turning away from the external world, finding peace, remembering what matters. And so that would be my biggest invitation from this, like, rest. Just stop doing.
So that's why we have the lockdowns. Now I got it.
Yeah, we're forced.
So yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to have so many insights of different people's lives, and especially what you shared today. I think there was a lot of wisdom in between, and I when I close the video, I will be more rich. I feel more rich, and I very appreciate that.
Me too. Thank you
Exchange.
for your time. Yeah, I feel like we have to flip reverse it another time so that you get asked the questions.
Sure. Whenever you want. So thank you so much for taking the time, and maybe we make a second round at some point in a few weeks or whenever.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you feel like coming to Greece at some point, you're very invited and welcome here.
I will absolutely do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
And bye bye.